like, I don't know. You're like doing your intro. I'm like, I don't know what our intro is. Okay, so we're
introducing the new podcast, right?
What is it? Is it like how many articles a week are we, or a month? What are we?
Do you have the articles ready?
We got the books right here.
It's in there, I guess.
Can we just riff a bit?
Yeah, so oh my gosh! There's a new podcast coming out. Crazy, from the Capilano Courier. Do you ever just get into this moment where you're like, I could read, but I don't want to read. I wish I could listen to it. Great news. Adam?
We're starting a new podcast. Sorry, I've been eating wheat thins. We're starting a new podcast, which is essentially us just going through the most recent edition of the Capilano Courier, where we talk about our favorite articles, read our favorite articles, and yeah, it's sort of like a take on like an audiobook version of the issue, but with commentary, insight, a couple of laughs.
What website is this being posted on?
The podcast is being posted on like all podcast platforms. You can find them on Spotify, you can find them on Apple Podcasts, you can find them on YouTube, you can find them at your mom's home, you can find them anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, as every podcaster says. Welcome everybody to the first episode of the new Courier Corner. I am Sara Brinkac, co-EIC of the Capilano Courier.
And I am Adam Wallace, the humor editor for the Capilano Courier.
And for this month, we are reading some articles that we've chosen from the edition of the Courier. We pulled out articles that we think align well with our theme of clarity for the month of January.
Sara is going to be reading out of the news section, International Students in a Liminal Space, and from the feature section, Forging a Different Path in Media. And from the letters section, I'm going to be reading Life Through Art and Ephemera. And from the humor section, I'm going to be reading the article, What Would Happen If You Were to Release 100,000 Tiny Crabs into the BOSA Building? We think that these articles reflect the concept of clarity very well.
Yeah, the crab
one seems
jokes.
Yeah, the crab one seems mystifying more than clarifying.
You can't have clarity without ambiguity.
Exactly.
So this is the letter from the EIC this month on the idea of clarity. And it asks the central question, who is really governing me? And it was written by me, Sara Brinkac, the co-EIC. The body and mind are a tangled pair. Both crave harmony, yet seem to roam in deserted hallways, half remembering a companion it used to be connected to. The mind, perhaps bored or perhaps frustrated, decides to skip off into the psychic worlds of our creation instead. This makes sense, as it is quite an important world of deadlines, plans, the need for solutions, debates, constant comparison, waiting, and is never lacking of a constant pull toward another frontier. The body, keeper of many memories, many emotions, many mysterious forces, is pulled off by the slender thread of connection to the mind. With blind eyes, the body feels its way through its journey of the mind's whims. And yet, contrary to its feeble demeanor, and completely unbeknownst to the mind, the body tugs and vibrates its delicate thread on this excursion to subtly direct course. Often, it is believed the mind is the center of our being. After all, the mind is the planner, the decision maker, the winner and the loser. The mind is what compiles and determines our identity in this world. It is, at this moment of thought, however, the body, with its host of stored information, keen sensitivity, and intuition coughs, forgotten in the corner. For it isn't until those fateful nights where the mouth releases unexpected words, the mind is flooded with a storm of unwanted thoughts, the hands act in ways we are shocked and saddened by, that our mind begins the search for its other half, unaware of that curious thread gently tied around its being. Instead, a pilgrimage is made back into the depths of self. There is a desperate search to find the culprit, to find the one feeling these things, making these decisions against all reason. Who was really governing me? I had these plans, I made sense of it all, but suddenly there's something feeling a very irrational way. Someone has done something to me quite unpleasant, quite unexpected. A specter on the other side of the world acted in the most curious of ways and set off a reaction that sputters and sparks to my doorstep, affecting my course of life forever. How can this be? Who is responsible? The mind will poke and pry at the truth to the point of exhaustion, trying to conceive the universe in a brain that is laughable in comparison to the intelligence it exists in. After months of starved staggering through long, dusty roads, the mind falls to its knees, ripped eyelashes and squeezed lids, head to the ground and palms faced open. Here it will surrender to whatever it was that brought them to this place, sobbing and pleading for an answer. For a moment, it is silent. The eye of the storm has been reached. It is only in that prostrated moment of surrender that a certain remarkable thing begins to happen. Rest. The feeling of rest courses through the now materialized body. The forgotten creature hidden in the shadow of thought forced on this desperate pilgrimage. The body softly smiles. What a wonderful feeling of rest this is. The mind, now silent, only concentrating on the frayed and tattered thread that went unnoticed for years, watches with grace the tender care of repair enacted by the body, the ease of reflection that arises, and the tranquility of harmony. These are not loud things that offer answers with lights and shouts. These are the revelations of a rose's languid scent or a lilac breeze. These are the whispers and movements of the body. Just as mist rises from the lake at sunrise, so the need for answers and the pressure of time evaporates from the mind's eye. What is left is a peaceful scene. The sky, perfectly reflected in the lake's mirror, a crystal reflection of hanging trees, floating clouds, and here, leaning over it all, the self that had been so desperately searched for. Looking deeper into the mirror, the self sees the pristine water that offers a view of life below the surface, the colored rocks, the dancing minnows, the floating weeds, the gentle currents. All is seen through, all is reflected on. In this moment of peace, the gift of clarity appears. How utterly precious. Now, how shall we live with this connection? All my love, Sara Brinkac. All right, with that in mind, let's get into some articles. Okay, so our choice for the January news article this month is from our very own video production manager, Laura Morales Padilla. This title of this article is "The International Students in the Liminal Space. The Pathway to Permanent Residency Has Turned into a Maze." Despite an increase in international tuition fees, unaffordable housing options, and long bus lines, the number of international students continues to grow at post-secondary institutions in Canada. So, why do international students put up with these unfair conditions? It is because they want to become permanent residences. According to the latest survey conducted by the Capilano Courier, it is because they want to become permanent residents. I wanted a better life, so yeah, if I'm paying so much, I need PR, stated one of the 60 international students surveyed. The results show that 70% applied for a study permit, with the intention of obtaining permanent residency, and 68% indicated that if having a Canadian post-secondary education did not increase their chances of getting PR, then they wouldn't have chosen to study in Canada. So, where did these expectations come from? And how feasible is Canadian post-secondary education as a pathway to PR? In 2012, the Advisory Panel on Canada's International Education Strategy provided a report about Canada's opportunity and capacity for strong growth in attracting international students. The panel envisioned attracting 450,000 students by 2022, double the number they had at the time, with the rationale that immigration through international education is one of the safest immigration paths, as students can demonstrate their capabilities to adapt and succeed through their education period. A Statistics Canada report released in 2022 examined international students as a growing source of labor and found that they face fewer obstacles with respect to credential recognition and language proficiency, are familiar with the culture, and have already built social networks in Canada. When the Minister of the IRCC, Mark Miller, announced that Canada was to host around 900,000 international students in 2023, the public concern around housing and immigration started to grow. And so did the scapegoating of international students. So, how does this system work, and why has it become unsustainable? If an international student finishes a 2-year program, or longer, at a Canadian designated learning institution, and then works for 1 year under a post-graduation work permit, they can apply for permanent residency. Word choice alert, they can apply, meaning that PR is far from guaranteed. Still, 82% of interviewed international students knew about this PR formula, as it is commonly pitched to them by recruitment agencies. The question is, how feasible is Canadian education as a pathway to PR nowadays? The Canadian government selects the best candidates for permanent residency by sorting them into programs and giving them a score depending on factors such as age, spousal status, level of education, work experience, and language fluency. For international students, the Canadian Experience Class, a program managed through Express Entry, is the most frequent pathway to permanent residency. They become part of the CEC pool of candidates by following the PR formula. The highest-ranking candidates receive an invitation to apply for permanent residency in rounds of invitations. The highest-ranking candidates receive an invitation to apply, or an ITA, for permanent residency in rounds of invitations. The number of ITAs are tied to the needs of the labor market. What are the probabilities of an international student finding themselves among the lucky few? Along with the number of ITAs issued at a particular round, the score of the lowest-ranked candidate invited is available to the public. This is our best indicator of how competitive it is to get an ITA. Bigger numbers of ITAs issued and smaller scores of lowest-ranked candidates mean higher probabilities. Take a CapU student who followed the PR formula, meaning they finished a 2-year degree and worked for 1 year. Their score as a CEC candidate would be 437 out of 1,200. If they are under the age of 29 and secured the maximum score in their English proficiency test. Now, for a student who finished a bachelor's degree and worked for 3 years, the score would be 510. Additional points are granted for those with French language skills, arranged employment, and other case-by-case factors. The question is, are these points competitive enough? In the CEC specific rounds that happened in 2021, the score of the lowest-ranked candidate invited ranged from 357 to 462. At the time, the score of a former international student who followed the PR formula was enough to get an ITA. However, in the CEC rounds that took place in 2024, the scores of the lowest-ranked candidates invited ranged between 507 and 547. So the scores from 2- and 4-year programs paired with only 1 year of work experience are currently not enough to make the cut. While the number of candidates for Express Entry with scores between 501 and 600 have more than doubled from 7,633 in 2021 to 16,495 in November 2024. For an international student who wants to get PR, the solution is not as simple as changing from a 2-year to a 4-year program. By the time they graduate and gain work experience, they are likely to find the minimum score has increased. Moreover, it is hard to predict what the needs of the province will be next year, let alone 4 years from now. As the Canadian government, post-secondary institutions, and recruitment agencies market Canadian education as a pathway to PR, they fail to communicate that the chances of an international student becoming a permanent resident have more to do with labor market needs and public opinion around immigration than with their scores. If international students lack a reasonable chance of becoming permanent residents, new questions arise. Should international students continue to trust the system? Or is the post-secondary education system exploiting this trust? There has been very little incentive for these institutions to improve conditions for international students. But without PR as bait, they will have to assess if what they are offering is enough. It's a great article, and I was really happy to choose this article to read this month because as someone who is a non-international student, this did a great job of putting the situation of international students in a frame of understanding and really affected me after I read this. Not only their decreased chance of getting PR and the whole reason why they're here, but just the amount of money that they're paying to be here, all of the stress of families, putting together what they can to send their kids here. And like, I'm already stressed myself going to school, doing work, working, and supporting myself on domestic fees, let alone international fees. Yeah, I'm really grateful for Laura to be writing this and beginning this discussion to kind of inspire a bit more empathy and camaraderie amongst students in this position, because I don't think domestic students always register what the international students are really going through.
This is Life Through Art and Ephemera. Written by Jasmin, Linton, she, her. Illustrated by Jordan Reichert, he, him, crew illustrator. Life Through Art and Ephemera. Ephemera are items that were not originally intended to be preserved or kept, but have been collected or kept anyway. I come from a very artistic family. From my grandma's pottery workshop to the walls of my home covered in family-made paintings, to painting dates on my sister's front porch, I've always been surrounded by art and creativity. I think this is why my experiences throughout my life are so closely linked with my creative endeavors. Along the way, the media and process of my art shifted. There was always something lacking in just painting on a canvas. Even the limitlessness of digital art didn't seem to fulfill what I wanted out of my art. To focus on the process rather than the finished product, and to always have a challenge. I'm very fond of colors and textures. The first journal spread I completed was covered in different kinds of colored paper, dots of red paint, and a bunch of purple yarn. It looked more like a craft cupboard vomit than anything, but the creation of it was where I felt fulfilled rather than the final product. It made me want to keep making more. It was the beginning of 9th grade in my high school when I found the memory-keeping, challenge-creating, ultra-creative art form of journaling. Using anything I could stick in a notebook to collage, I started creating art spreads with literal trash, ephemera. It started with stealing skiing magazines from the coffee table, sorry, Dad, and ended with a meticulously organized craft cupboard of creations waiting to be made. With my supplies grew my techniques. In my second journal, the first 5 pages are just covered in loops and swishes as I practice learning calligraphy and other lettering styles. This skill developed and grew, so now I use my lettering for titles and headings throughout my current journals. Just please don't make me look back at that second edition. The calligraphy was horrendous. The trash and scraps I end up using in journals come from my life. Movie tickets, candy wrappers, and product packaging. I even save my grocery lists and every recipe I bring home. Those are best for backgrounds. My friends and family knowing that I save everything under the earth for my journal, keep bits and pieces for me too. If we go to a movie, a play, or even just out for coffee, my sister always asks me, "Do you want this for your journal?" It's become so frequent that the question has just gone down to, "Journal?" The types of materials I use hold memories of my life, so the ways I am creative are wound up tightly with my journey and experiences. I can look at a page from a journal I completed years ago and remember an amazing concert through the crinkled paper wristband I plastered in it, regardless if I've written anything or not. Journaling for me is simultaneously an art form and memory preservation. I'm currently working on my 21st journal. Crazy, I know. When I first started, I didn't have as many materials and had no idea what I was doing, so my style has changed drastically over the years. The pages will mirror what I'm feeling and reflecting when I create them. As I get new materials, I also associate them with different volumes of journals, and therefore, different aspects of my life. Certain stickers or paint will remind me of my birthday in the summer when I received them as a gift, or more writing will signify I found a new favorite pen I couldn't stop using. Journaling is not only a creative outlet, and now an all-consuming hobby in a good way, but also, like regular journaling, is extremely beneficial to my mental well-being. My initial intentions when getting into creative journaling were creatively motivated, but it's also helped me process hard experiences and quietly reflect. Even now, during my busy school year, I find the time, when I'm very overwhelmed, to cover a page in random stickers, break out my paints, or even just use the page and a pen to do something with that all-overwhelmingness. There is no wrong way to create in a journal, either. Some of my pages are rants of messy writing, others are collages of friends and family. The fluidity of journaling is both why I love it so much and why my journey is so intertwined with my art. I relate to this article a lot. I think it gives a nice kind of tinge to the idea of living in an artistic world 24/7 in terms of always having the ability to give yourself over to art in a way that gives clarity, I guess, to bring it all back to the theme. It gives clarity to your surroundings in your life at hand. Like, I don't journal myself, but I do make a lot of art. And I guess in a way, I haven't been thinking about it as journaling, but in a way it is because I never stop. Like, I do a lot of music and I can look back on the times when I've been making that song or at that time. And it is time stamped. It's like a journal. It's like a memory. And even though I might not be structuring it that way, it's definitely still there, that it's a part of that moment in time. And I think just saying, like, this is my journal, this is like what I like to do. Yeah, I think it's powerful. I think it gives like a certain clarity over life.
This next article is from our features section. The title of this article is Forging a Different Path in Media: How Gregory Coys, the Indigenous Digital Filmmaking Program Coordinator, encourages students to make media on their own terms. This one is written by me, and I must say it took me a couple months to write it, and I am quite happy with it, how it turned out. Around sunrise, in a tranquil scene of flowing water, through soft morning haze, you may find Gregory Coys. He would be the man of Métis Cree descent who is sitting silently at the shore of the lake with a camera set up beside him, watching, listening, and being with nature while he lets the camera record. After a few minutes, you might expect him to stop recording, maybe move his camera around on the tripod or pick up to another location. Instead, he remains still. Like the camera, like the setting, simply observing nature unfold in real time. While some may find this in action odd, to filmmakers in the slow media community, it is not only typical, but powerful. Slow media is the practice of being present through your camera. Coys now sits in his Capilano University office, where he works as the Indigenous Digital Filmmaking, or IDF, program coordinator. In the corner of the room, a fan hums, drying out a book of his that got wet the day prior. Coys repeats, "It is not a skill, it's a practice." To a slow media practitioner, this means attempting to create still frame long form video that captures the essence of an environment in real time. This real time Coys refers to is the pace of nature, especially with temporal references that surpass our lifespans. Coys notes his long-standing fascination with glaciology, dynamic elemental processes that have shaped and continue to shape our Earth, as a personal temporal reference, and one he attempts to relate to in slow media. This sense of real time allows the audience to connect to our natural world in ways not typically found in advertisements, sitcoms, viral videos, or any other colonized media, which are more concerned with compressing time to capitalize on attention and turn profit. When considering slow media and its goal of documenting the beauty of nature, it is clear that there is no clear-cut skill to develop, rather, a practice of relation and patience. When asked when exactly the idea for slow media arose, Coys didn't answer with an exact instance, but instead conjured a history. It goes through documentary, which is a really powerful basis for Indigenous peoples. Names like Zacharias Canuck, Alanis Abomswin, Willie Dunn, and Gil Cardinal were brought up with great respect, especially Canuck, a filmmaker from Iqaluit, Nunavut, whose widely acclaimed and inspirational film, Atanarjuat the Fast Runner, retells an Inuit legend and skillfully weaves in the central character to many Indigenous stories, nature. By using uninterrupted shots of characters moving through landscapes, with the sun and specific seasons as the reference for time, Canuck allowed audiences to experience what Coys refers to as real time. The sense of time is in direct contrast to the quick cuts from locations, days, and scenes one would find in the compressed time of Hollywood content concerned with maximizing information. So it was, the simple yet radical decision to record real time set Coys on the path of slow media. Coys also noted the inception of high definition or HD cameras as another major influence on the creation of slow media. In May 2000, at Hollyhock Retreat Center on Cortes Island, BC, Coys had his first experience of high-definition imagery, where he witnessed a video of the surrounding forest that was extraordinary and remarkably engaging. Aware he was having an emotional reaction to the images of nature on screen, he knew he came across a powerful new medium to both relate to our natural world and continue to create decolonized media. With many communities and influences, slow media materialized. In 2010, Coys picked up the camera and continued developing the practice. He began to define slow media, create parameters, navigate issues, and discover audiences, all the while connecting deeply with the natural world. As the practice developed, the creation of a slow media community did too. And in 2019, Coys wrote his master's thesis on the slow media community, where he defined the interests of the community, outlined the influences of previous Indigenous filmmaking communities, and explored the future applications of the slow media community. Below is an excerpt which distinctly outlines the community's and Coys's intention in the realm of filmmaking. In it, he writes, "At its essence, slow media community invites both producers and viewers to be more conscious of the process of making and viewing media. It asks us to slow down and be present to the process of gathering and then sharing a sustainable and dynamic resource, the power and beauty of the earth, and the elements at work on the earth. This depiction of real time in nature is offered as an alternative to the compressed timelines and accelerated concept delivery of the majority of mainstream media. This is decolonized media. Slow media is an Indigenous expression of cinematic time and place." And here lies the power of the slow media community. the courage to create, explore, and build discourse outside of mainstream media. For Coys, this is decolonization in media, and it doesn't just exist within the slow media community, but carries into the classrooms of the IDF program, into the consciousness of the motion picture arts or MOPA students, and is beginning to enter productions outside of the school. Students in the IDF program are taking on slow media projects as the foundation of their learning. They learn to understand how to create a visually compelling frame and build the skill with patience. They are also developing the clarity to relate to their environment when creating, rather than the typical fevered pace of film productions, which is already a significant stance of change. Slow media and Indigenous methods of film production are also entering MOPA classrooms, as Coys offers third-year students a lecture on slow media in Canadian cinema, helps teach and grades fourth-year courses, and continues to work with faculty in order to develop and introduce new practices. A typical film set is a scene of barely contained chaos. Many move in a frenzy. A constant pressure hangs over every member, which results in fast choices, little consideration of sustainability, and damage to follow. It isn't a wonder why the final product of the media is often dated with insensitivity and destruction when there's such little peace of mind to consider one's actions in the storm of creation. Now, with Coys backed by strong history, making patient and consistent efforts, one might walk upon a different scene on an IDF or MOPA film set. It is the morning of filming. Everyone gathers round, exhausted from long hours, many projects, and a tight timeline. Rather than the assistant director going through the rehearsed lines of safety guidelines, schedule, and rushing to start the day, everyone circles, feels where they're standing, and one asks, "How were your last 9 hours since we saw you? How can we help you today to make this production successful?" Everyone takes a breath. And perhaps, for a moment, feels inexplicably connected to the natural world. So that was our features piece on Gregory Coys and the slow media community. I really am so grateful for Gregory to give me the time to talk with him, to be so generous with his time, and excited about sharing slow media. I first became aware of slow media 4 years ago. I was taking a class at SFU, an experimental film class, and they used an example of slow media in one of the lectures. And I was just like, it just got in my mind and in my brain of just the audacity of someone to just film a river for 12 minutes. And I was so taken by it and affected by it, and so excited when I realized that filmmaker was a professor at Capilano. And I also read his master's thesis in preparation for this article, which brought a lot of insight and a lot of clarity over our media landscape, over perception of time, over Indigenous peoples and their relation to time and nature. It was a really grounding experience. And I think there's so much, I think there's so much strength in Indigenous perceptions of reality and connections with the natural world. And I think that supporting that in any way we can, or just honestly giving them the space to continue the work that they're doing is the least we can do.
What would happen if 100,000 tiny crabs got into the BOSA building? The Capilano Courier gets its pinchers on this important hypothetical. Written by Kate Henderson, she/they, crew writer. It was a quaint day in the Nat and Flora BOSA Center for Film and Animation. Sewing machines were clicking, cameras were rolling, and an 8-legged army was approaching. The costuming students were the first to spot this increasing mass of crustaceans and rushed to tell the classes shooting in the studios. Unfortunately, the male film professors had ignored them, as they were busy preaching to students how qualified they are to teach because they once met Quentin Tarantino. Other film students were rendered oblivious in the Foley room. They were hitting spare rib bones on a large plank of wood to make SpongeBob character Mr. Krabs' signature strut for their indie drama short film about being a soldier during World War I. The first 50,000 crabs used brute force to breach the costuming room, with the costumers fleeing alongside the film students, without the male film professors, as they kept preaching about their buddy Quentin to an empty studio. At this point, the other 50,000 crabs made it up the steps of the BOSA building, 25,000 cascading to the vending machine, and the other 25,000 toward the cinema cafe. This is where the crabs discovered something monumental to their overtaking: the choice to use fake crab in the cafe sushi. None other than Judy stood her post, ready to serve the most customers the cafe had probably seen in its entire lifetime. And so, crabs praised thee for saving their brothers. This was the end of day one, but only the beginning of the forever crab invasion. P.S. The animation students technically discovered the crab invasion on day 2, as they left BOSA at 3 a.m. the next day. This led to 100,000 crabs entering the elevator and getting stuck inside without a keycard. Cut to 5 years later. Peace, harmony, joy. It was another quaint day in the crab and crab of film and animation, and the Crab Cafe had never been better. The crabs assembled a throne for Judy out of now useless C-100s and red cameras, with the menu items now limited to ground seashells. Capilano University residents had never seen this level of nutrition before. The vending machines are useless, as all of the snacks had holes poked in them on day 1. The first floor bathrooms are most useful in their routine flooding, offering ample moisture that all 100,000 crabs needed to survive. However, due to bathing in human shit, 20,000 crabs fell to disease. This is when crabs saw not only a significant decline in population, but also the economy, with dining dollars, now commonly referred to as doubloons, dropping below the value of a yen. In the basement, the glass of the costuming building was rebuilt, but only to the height of the crabs. Certain cameras were rebuilt, including the ARRI Alexa Mini, now known as the ARRI Alexa Mini Mini Mini. Last but not least, the crabs proved better communicators than the old male professors of BOSA, as both populations proved to be highly crabby. With 80,000 crabs and Judy at the helm, the crab of film and animation is as prosperous and fair as any society could ever hope to be. Oh, that was great. Oh, man.
How clear are you feeling?
I feel pretty clear, especially after reading the what would happen if you were to release 100,000 tiny crabs in the BOSA building article.
Yeah, that really
That makes you real. It brings clarity to the situation of what would happen if that were to happen.
It really brings clarity to the situation that, like, Judy is the best.
Yeah, no, true. Judy is the best.
Judy's goated.
It's funny. We were recording the opening there, and I was just thinking about it. I was like, it's so strange that I'm like, yeah, I'm the humor editor, and then the whole time I'm like, yeah, so clarity is kind of like this idea of like reflection and art. And if I listened to myself and I didn't know who I was, I'd be like, why is this person the humor editor? They're not funny at all. You know?
It's like, talk about the crabs.
Yeah.
What are we paying you for?
Who is this guy? Come on, be funny.
Well, some would say that at the heart of humor is really tragedy, seriousness, most stern darkness.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or it could just be 100,000 crabs in a building.
I was just thinking about like how like when I had a moment of clarity when we were doing that intro where I realized I was like, I have such a disinclination to being a serious person that it was hard for me to not just be stupid.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. When we were recording that, I was like, oh, I have to actually take this seriously and talk like I have some sort of like something to say instead of just being like, I'll just make jokes and try and make people laugh, and that's my value.
But real talk, real talk. Do you find that your humor is a mask? Like, that you don't want to get into seriousness, and so, like, you use humor to avoid those situations?
I mean, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a mask because it's like, I don't know. It's very hard being like, I don't know. Like, I feel awkward with my roommate sometimes because like he knows me from school before we moved in.
Yeah.
And I was whenever I was hanging out with him, I would always be like on, you know?
Yeah.
And then now that we live together and I just see him, I'll just be like, hey, you know? And I was just like drained out. And I was like, oh no, who am I if I'm not the guy that's like, hey, what's up, dude?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I think you can relate to that. You're definitely a zany person sometimes.
I've been described as zany in my day. Zany. That could go on my resume. Sarah is a zany personality. Sometimes.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I think it's like a 1930s version of like.
I picture like
quirky.
Jagged edges, kind of like you know?
Zany. I picture Billy Zane.
Yeah, I picture. I was just about to be like Billy Zane,
and also Billy Zane,
who is, by the way, not zany. I don't think.
No,
he's very
zany
good
person.
Actor.
He's a good actor, not zany.
You seen the movie Dead Calm with Billy Zane, Nicole Kidman, Sam Neill?
Stacked cast.
They're all on a boat.
Have you seen Orlando with Billy Zane? That's the only Billy Zane I know.
What about He's in Titanic?
I haven't watched Titanic.
Have you seen Titanic?
I haven't seen Titanic.
Well, this is a moment of clarity right here.
Yeah. Oh my God, what am I doing? I haven't seen James Cameron's hit.
Mega hit Titanic. It's not very. I mean, it's fun.
It's overrated.
Leonardo DiCaprio's bad in it.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here on this boat? I reckon. Like, it's like stuff like that, and you're like, what?
Shut up. I never got into it, but like my dad was always like, it's a bad movie. We're not gonna watch that. That's just the household. He's like, so we're gonna watch The Fifth Element for the 6th time.
My dad would think movies were bad, but he would still let us like watch them.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember sometimes being like, can we get this? And he'd be like, oh, I guess. Like, and then I made him watch the movie Thumb Wars, which was like an hour. I thought it was a normal movie, but it was just a parody of Star Wars, just with thumbs, like with faces painted on them.
That's awesome.
And it was only like 45 minutes long. And we rented it and got home.
Blockbuster?
At like our local video store.
That's crazy.
Got home and then it ended and I was like, is that the whole thing? And he was like, yeah. And it was not funny or memorable. I mean, it was funny to a kid because there were thumbs, I guess.
But that's it.
But
that's so funny. Like, yeah, no, we were not getting picking privileges in our household.
I saw a couple kids' movies if my dad was like, well, that seems acceptable to watch. I'll watch that.
Yeah. I went to the Bolt premiere.
You know, I might have seen that as well. I remember seeing that movie. I don't remember when.
Yeah.
But it came out and I was a child.
Huge
and
deal.
I want to rewatch it because I remember it's like there's some scene that stuck with me where Bolt is lost in the woods at night next to a highway. Some Lynchian scene from Bolt stuck with me all these years. And I want to go back and watch it, see if it's still there.
I just remember that hamster was hilarious. Hamster stole the show.
Who was the hamster played by?
I don't know.
I don't want to look it up now.
Stole the show.
It's probably like Zach Galifianakis or something.
Yeah, Zach Galifianakis is the
I watched that movie Queer that just came out. You got to see this movie. It's great.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But speaking of Zach Galifianakis, Jason Schwartzman is just stealing Zach Galifianakis' thunder. That whole movie.
Really?
It's so fun. Jason Schwartzman.
Schwartzman's been doing good.
He's great in the movie, but he's basically just doing Zach Galifianakis. He's in a fat suit and he's got a beard and he's just like kind of like like it's a very Zach Galifianakis performance.
Okay, I thought Zach Galifianakis was in Queer,
No.
and Jason Schwartzman was just acting circles around him, which I was like, wow, good for him.
No.
He just doing a rip off of Zach Galifianakis,
which is crazy to say. I know that's like people are like, well, he's Jason Schwartzman. He's obviously a better actor than Zach Galifianakis, but it's hard to know.
If Zach Galifianakis and Jason Schwartzman were in a scene together, I think Zach Galifianakis would steal the show.
True. He's kind of a show stealer.
He is.
Famously from The Hangover, stole the whole movie.
Yeah, the whole franchise.
Stole the whole They made 3 of those movies.
And he loved it.
And everyone liked all 3 of them.
Yeah. It's great.
And then the guy made Joker, everyone's favorite movie.
I think that it's maybe like some like natural law like that we're coming across here, that you have 2 film students in a
that it goes to movies
together, and it's just like we're allowed to talk about anything, and we're just talking about the most.
This is a moment of clarity.
Yeah.
We've come upon another.
A moment of clarity is that we are only socially capable when talking.
It's the only area I feel like knowledgeable about talking about. Almost. Just rely on it. I have literally realized in my life like how often I'll just go up to people and just be like, do you remember this joke from The Simpsons? And then I'll just tell the joke that they did in the show. And like I'll get a little satisfaction from being like, oh, it's kind of like I made the joke because they're laughing.
I just do the thing where I'm like, I just want to relive the moment, and like I don't like. I'm sure they're not enjoying themselves, but I'm really enjoying reenacting the Vine that I'm thinking of. And so it's more just like, hey, do you remember this thing? No, you don't? Well, allow me for a minute to just really just walk down memory lane. I got a lot of fun out of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like the other person isn't even there. You're just like, thanks for contributing to my...
Thank you for being an audience. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we were talking about the idea of like masking, using humor to mask. That's got to be part of it, is turning people into an audience so you don't have to be like a person to them. That's what I do, I think. I'm not very... When I'm one-on-one with people, I get like nervous almost. I'm better in groups.
I always have the vision of myself as like I'm tireless, like I'm tap dancing for like 8 hours. I'm like, do you like that? And I'm just like having a conversation, like especially with people who are like more comfortable with silence. I'm getting a lot more. I'm definitely a lot more comfortable with being able to like just be silent and not have to, but I've definitely just like the exhaustion of just having to like keep up a conversation with someone. Yeah.
I would say, I'm like, the idea of being comfortable with silence, I feel like is hard to... It's easy to say you're comfortable with silence, but I feel like it's actually really hard.
Yeah.
Because I'll be silent with people a lot, but I'm never like actually that comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like me just being like, no, it's fine. It's comfortable. Don't worry. But in my head, I'm just like, I should say something. I should do something. Like there's that kind of hamster wheel running.
Thing. Yeah. I think 2 things on that. I think first thing, this is a double barrel thought.
The old expression.
I'm about to DBT. The first thing is, honestly, advice that has stuck with me for so long, from shout out Suze.
Oh yeah.
This is gonna be such a MOPA centered podcast, but Suze Friesen, who is a professor at
She's the best.
MOPA.
Yeah.
She's the best. She gave us advice in our first year to be the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey. She's like, be the monolith. Like, if you're in a room full of people that you don't know, or if you're on set and you're freaking out, just be the monolith. And it's so powerful to just be comfortable with who you are, where you are, rather than trying to get something or to be in this anxious spiral around the people or on set.
See, I think I know that, but I think it's hard still to get to that point.
It's really hard. I agree, but for some reason, like
Thinking of the monolith itself.
yeah,
That could help.
right. It's like I have definitely consciously been like, be the monolith. I just like think of the monolith.
Wait, what? So what was the other barrel from this double barrel?
The second barrel was I think that relating this back to clarity. This is like the numero uno. This is the numero. I hated it as soon as it came out of my mouth. This is the numero uno. I can't believe I chose to keep going with it. Barrier to clarity. And that's like that. Like that's exactly what we touched on. Is like the being okay with being still. And being okay, like, because I think that's in the stillness is where clarity is bred. But what keeps us from clarity is this, like, itch that we need to scratch of doing something or saying something or moving and that's, like, if we can get over that hump is when we find our clarity and our insight.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. It's been my personal experience, at least.
That's great. Should we end it on that? What do you think?
Ooh, is that a nice like thought?
What do you think, Christian?
Christian,
He's giving a thumbs up.
Christian loves it.
Christian loves it. I gotta go home. I got dinner to make and binoculars to paint.
That's great, Adam. Thanks so much.
I could talk about the binocular.
I love how it's just like it was like, yeah, maybe it is in stillness that we find clarity. Thanks, everybody. I gotta go home.
I gotta get the fuck out of here.
I gotta get out of here.
I got so much shit to do. I'm just running around.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to our first episode of the new Courier Corner.
This is exciting.
It's been fun.
I was a little this was a really nice conversation though.
Yeah, it was. It was nice to remember why we do what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it was also really, honestly, it was really great to share pieces and the work that I am proud of.